Ever dreamed of owning a high-end European car, but then you saw the price tag in India? Yeah, that sticker shock is something else. Well, what if I told you that price could soon be slashed almost in half? It's true. A massive new trade deal between India and the EU is about to change everything, and we're going to dive deep into what this means for your dream car. So, for what feels like forever, India has had this massive tariff wall guarding its car market. We're talking import taxes that could go all the way up to 110%. That's why those European imports have always been so expensive. But now, this historic new free trade agreement, the FTA, is about to come in with a wrecking ball. The plan? To tear that wall down and bring those duties way down, potentially as low as 10% over time. Okay, so what is this deal really? For ages, people called the Indian car market a velvet rope club. Super exclusive, super expensive to get into. Well, this agreement is basically kicking that door wide open. And this isn't just some small tweak. We're talking about the biggest free trade deal India or the EU has ever signed, creating a gigantic new trade zone. And you heard it right from the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. This is a big deal. I mean, it covers pretty much everything, agriculture, you name it. But let's be honest, the part that has everyone, especially car lovers, really talking is what it's going to do to car prices. All right, let's get to the good stuff. The question on everyone's mind is pretty simple. Which cars are going to get cheaper, and just how much cheaper are we talking? This is where things get really exciting for anyone who loves cars. Let's take a look at a real-world example to see the impact. Okay, look at this number. 4.35 crore rupees. Let that sink in. That's roughly what you'd pay for a fully imported Mercedes Maybach in India right now. And why so much? Well, a huge chunk of that is just that insane 110% import tax. But now, imagine that huge import duty starts to melt away, getting slashed over time all the way down to just 10%. What do you think happens to that giant price tag? Boom. 2.28 crore rupees. That is, wow, it's a drop of over 2 crore. The price is basically cut in half. I mean, you just don't see price corrections like this. It completely changes the game for potential buyers. And hey, it's not just the Maybachs. The biggest winners here are all those cars that are imported as completely built units, or CBUs. The ones that are built in Europe and shipped over, ready to go. We're talking the really fun stuff. Ferraris, Porsches, those awesome high-performance models from BMW M and Audi RS. Even cult favorites like the VW Golf GTI. These are the cars that are going to see those jaw-dropping price cuts. Okay, but hold on. Before you start thinking every single car is getting a massive discount, there is a huge catch, and it's a big one. This deal was very carefully designed to protect India's own car industry. Think of it like a protective shield, specifically for the mass market cars. And if you want to know why, well, this chart says it all. Look at this. A whopping 90% of all cars sold in India are in that mass market category, under 25 lakh rupees. For India, protecting those sales and the jobs that go with them was an absolute deal breaker. So how'd they do it? They came up with something called the below 15,000 euro rule. It sounds a little technical, but it's simple. It means if a car's base import value, that's the cost, insurance, and freight, or CIF, is less than about 16.5 lakh rupees, there are zero duty cuts, none. And once you add all the other local taxes on top, that pretty much covers any car with a showroom price under 25 to 27 lakh rupees. So what's the bottom line? This deal is specifically designed to protect local Indian manufacturing. All those cars you see everywhere, the Marutis, the Tatas, the Hyundais, they're not going to be affected by this. And this protection is also super important for another booming area, India's own electric vehicle industry. Yeah, actually, this is a really big point. To give Indian EV makers like Tata and Mahindra a running head start, the deal basically says no duty cuts for European EVs for the first 5 years. It's a protection window, a chance for the local EV scene to grow strong before it has to compete directly with the European giants. But don't think for a second this is just a one-way street, with European cars just pouring into India. Not at all. This was a tough negotiation, and India played its cards really well. It secured major access for its own car makers, basically building an export superhighway for Indian-made cars heading right into Europe. And you can see just how much of a two-way street it is when you look at the numbers. Check out the quotas. The EU gets to send 250,000 cars to India each year, But India gets to export more than double that, 625,000 cars to the EU. Plus, tariffs on auto parts are going to zero for both sides, and Indian EVs get that tariff-free access to Europe way sooner. It's a really smart deal for India. So, what's the grand plan here? What's the big picture? It's all about changing India's role in the car world. The idea is to transform India from this protected market into a major strategic export hub. The real goal is to get companies to build cars and parts in India specifically to sell them in Europe. Okay, so we've talked about these awesome potential price drops and the big strategic vision. But let's get real for a second. When can you actually walk into a showroom and see these lower prices on the sticker? We need a bit of a reality check here, because this isn't happening tomorrow. So the deal itself was finalized around early 2026, but now comes all the paperwork, right? It's got to go through legal reviews, get approved by parliaments in India and all the EU countries. So what's the timeline? Well, most experts are saying you probably won't see the first cars with these new prices in showrooms until mid-2027, at the absolute earliest. And look, if you want a real reality check, listen to this. The CEO of Mercedes-Benz India came right out and said that even with this deal, they don't expect to be cutting prices anytime soon, especially not on the cars they already build in India, which is like over 90% of what they sell here. So why is that? Why wouldn't prices drop immediately? Well, it's because the final price you pay is super complicated. You got things like the exchange rate between the rupee and the euro, which can wipe out the savings. Plus, these tariff cuts aren't happening all at once. They're going to be phased in over several years. And all those other local taxes, they're still there. So for most car makers, these savings will probably just help them avoid raising prices in the future, rather than leading to huge discounts. So look, that dream of getting a supercar for a massive discount, it's definitely closer to reality than it's ever been. But this deal, it's about so much more than just making fancy cars cheaper. This is a fundamental reset for the entire Indian auto industry. It's about shifting the country from being a protected market to a real strategic player on the global stage. And that leaves us with one big final question to think about. Now that the doors have been thrown open, what does the future of driving in India actually look like?